Okay guys, hello. Thanks for coming. Gonna introduce myself a little, so you know me a little. My name is Mykolas Romeris, but you don't have to do this. For the English-speaking people, I just do Remy. Okay. Gonna try to deliver you a lecture about induced attention deficit. We're gonna call it beyond genetic ADHD predisposition, which means that we can cause the disorder by ourselves, and you don't need to be genetically linked towards it. This is my background. I graduated computer science at Rugilė University, London. At the moment, I'm a project manager and statistics developer at State Data Agency. If you walk in the center of the town, you got Gediminas Prospect, and you probably cross my office every day then. So, looking at my background, you might want to ask what I'm doing in here, because I'm very mathematical person, right? But the truth is that social science was always my big passion, and I've spent much more time in the university reading works of Charles Darwin, Sigmund Freud, and Yuval Harari than I had to do on mathematics. So the exams went difficult. Wanna remind you what is ADHD. I'm sure you know what it is. Pretty popular disorder these days. Sounds strange, but it's true. It's attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. The main two characteristics is lack of focus and attention hyperactivity. We're going to speak more on that soon. Also want to remind you, maybe you heard that one, maybe you didn't, that ADHD is not a disease, it's a disorder. And there is a massive difference, because disease, something like a cancer or a virus, has a clear causes, and it is more or less objective. So you don't need a bunch of people, a bunch of scientists to declare that cancer is a problem because someone dies. It's obviously a problem though. Which a disorder is something different, and we as humans, we decide what disorders we do have and what we don't, and what behavior is a problem and what behavior is not. So, and the causes, it's ambiguous, it's not clear. We don't know how it works, how ADHD works, how OCD works, all of these things. We just have a rough idea that it's genetics together with the environment, but no clear causes. And it's more or less subjective. So not all of the people agrees on something like ADHD or OCD, because you have people that really oppose it, and the discussion is ongoing, and it will be for many years to come, I believe. So that's about this one. So I just wanted to mention that symptoms of ADHD are lack of focus and attention hyperactivity, and lack of focus on one activity means the same as attention hyperactivity on many activities. So it just basically means the same thing, just for you to know. It's a modern problem these days, and you probably face it, and I face it every day probably, that I can't work. I want to scroll my phone or play a game. But why is that one can't work but can play video games and scroll easily? Do you have an idea? Why is it so easy and attractive for attention to scroll the phone or play video games, but when you have to go to work to do something, write an assignment, for example, or read a book or anything like that, it's much harder.
And if anybody's online, because I don't see how many people there are, they can also turn on microphones and speak, right?
Okay. So, and the answer is stimulation. Stimulation is the act of provoking or triggering a response in the brain. So phones and games and some other things are much more stimulated than work, so we naturally crave for that stimulation. Examples of stimulation: sports, pets, music, socializing, food, meditation, relaxation, and accomplishment. These are the ones, we can call it more natural maybe, less stimulating, but these are examples of stimulation, so of activities of every day. And these are examples of high stimulation. Junk food, gaming, scrolling, orgasm, but we're not talking about sex, because sex is also stimulative, but orgasm is much more stimulative, it's high stimulation. Then obviously drugs, gambling, spending money, and pornography. So I want to explain you this graph. That's important to understand. So we've got these two areas. The reddish one is going to be the exciting area. Items in this area are exciting. And the blue area will be boring. This is the stimulation level. The higher it is, the higher the stimulation. And this is the stimulation threshold. So basically, the average level of human brain in terms of stimulation. So, and if your average level of stimulation is something like here, right? Activities like music, sports, food, socializing, pets, meditation, relaxation, and accomplishment is somewhat stimulative. It's not very high stimulative because your average level is here, but it is somewhat stimulating. And obviously junk food, gaming, scrolling, and all the other things, high stimulation when your average level is here. But cleaning your room and doing nothing or doing work, pretty boring thing though, but that's the reality. But what happens when you do high stimulation activities for too long? The average level of stimulation rises. And when the average level of stimulation rises, and you end up here somewhere, activities that were previously stimulative becomes boring. Music is boring, sports boring, food and socializing and pets not interesting anymore, used to be fun and cute and whatever. And then your normal stimulation is junk food, normal stimulation is gaming, normal stimulation is scrolling, and you don't get back to these activities very easily because they became boring. And these ones, normal, and these ones, high stimulating. So the problem is that. And specifically, I want to talk about scrolling and gaming today for a few reasons. Because they're both highly stimulative, they're cheap to access, and public is unsure if these are bad or not. If we're gonna get to the graph for the high stimulation levels, you cannot mess up your stimulation levels with orgasm usually because it only lasts like 15 seconds. But you can do with gaming and scrolling, because you can scroll for hours, just flood your brain with high stimulation, and you can do gaming for hours, flood your brain with stimulation. Junk food, obviously high stimulation, but it's not as dangerous because you cannot eat junk food for hours. It's gonna take like 20 minutes and then you're full and gonna throw up everything. And the others as well, it's difficult to influence your stimulation levels to raise average stimulation levels with gambling, for example. You have to have a lot of money though. Usually people don't have it. So talking about scrolling and gaming because it's cheap and highly stimulative, then I speak about how gaming stimulates the brain. So the basic mechanism would be dopamine rush, adrenaline rush, colors, competition, and goal achievement. That's a classic construct of a game. We're going to specifically talk about one gaming example that's called Counter-Strike. Pretty popular in Lithuania, used to play myself, and I really know how it works. So you got some goal seeking in the game, and the ways that it stimulates the game, you have to kill all the enemies. Every time you kill an enemy, there's a dopamine rush into your head. You feel happier about it because you're sort of tricked that you're doing something valuable. And clutch situations provokes adrenaline response, so you have really intense situations in the game when you are left against, let's say, 3 enemies and everything, and they're coming from all around the corners, and you're sort of you have an adrenaline rush, and players really live for these moments in the game. That's ranking system, competition. You go through ranks, and every time you hit a different rank, you feel better than anyone else behind you. So it sort of gives you a feeling that you are better than someone else. So the competition. And also cool graphics, colors, and special effects really adds to the stimulation. There is some change on gaming addiction. A little bit more people realizes that gaming is an addiction and you can become addicted to it, and it's a real problem. So specifically these three scientists from, I think it's Saudi Arabia University, published this paper on 2023 March, so it's a pretty fresh paper. They called it Symptoms, Mechanisms and Treatments of Video Game Addiction. So they analyzed many studies and found that video game addiction leads to changes in the brain that are similar to those that occur in substance addiction and gambling. So they are saying the stimulation level is so high and you mess up your brain that it really looks like after drug use or gambling. So really high stimulation, they say. There is a specific case, really sad case. It's called that in South Korea, parents were arrested because their 4-month-old daughter died due to suffocation when they were playing World of Warcraft. So they were playing the game for so long that the child just died from malnutrition and a lack of water. So really horrible death. Next, we speak about scrolling addiction as well, really highly stimulated element. I would bet that it really stimulates more than a game, but it's not a question. So, scrolling, very new. If we're gonna count Instagram as a starting point, it's 2010, so roughly 14 years. That's not too much for a technology. We're gonna specifically talk about scrolling reels. These are short videos. Short videos and reels are with us around 10 years. Somebody called it TikToks. It's about the same thing, basically. Because it's so young, it's not researched as much, naturally, and people don't think about it critically. Most of the people scroll their phone and they're just like, what wrong I'm doing? There's nothing wrong with it, isn't it? But the truth is different. Do you want to try to answer why reels generate so much attention? Why we go to it? What is the reason that a video of 7 seconds just drags our attention? Why is that?
It gives us fast dopamine.
That's one way of seeing it, and that's definitely true. But today we're going to speak about how exactly it works. I'm going to reduce the sound. How do you reduce the sound? Because it's going to be very loud, isn't it? All right. Okay. So now we're gonna watch a TikTok. I'm sure you're familiar with it. Though it's gonna be fun. We're just gonna watch the TikTok and we're going to analyze what is the thing that really keeps our attention to it. It ends in dopamine rush, that's for sure. But we're gonna speak about the content of the video.
I like this dopamine rush.
I'm sure you do, though. Most of us like this dopamine rush. And what do you think? Why this content sort of keeps our attention to it? Why we don't switch it off? We can watch it for hours usually, like a 20-minute session. Everybody would go on the phone and it would be like, just gonna watch a few videos and 20 minutes gone, another 20 minutes gone. And why is it so? Why does it have this content, this effect? Do you have an idea?
Yeah, so firstly, it contains cats, and cats are cute animals in general. So, and the videos itself, there's like a compilation of short videos of like 2 to 3 seconds, and so it's very easy to watch it for hours because you don't really feel like you're spending a lot of time because videos are that short.
Yeah.
And that's my approach.
Yeah, that's all things true. And these are the moments of cats being somewhat exciting or cute or whatever the emotion that gives it to you. Because you see, cat is usually a boring animal if you ever had one though. It sleeps like that for 20 hours. It's really a boring thing though, isn't it? So a reel is a peak excitement moment in a given activity. So you've got this activity, cats, pretty boring animals, but sometimes they do something funny or cute, and we live for the moments of joy for that, isn't it? Nobody's having fun just watching a cat walking around though. It's not that interesting, isn't it? Or something like that, or the normal behavior just lying down, and sometimes it is cute though, but for the most of the time, it's a pretty boring animal. So we're going to speak about the activity a little more. First of all, if you got a cat, it costs money and it costs effort, so you have to take care of the animal. So there's some resources and there's some effort that you have to pay that animal exists in your house. And they're pretty boring though, creatures, sleeping 15 to 20 hours a day. So they have from 4 to 9 hours of activity, and usually they don't do anything interesting though. They would stare through the window and see nothing and do it like for an hour, non-stop. So not really exciting though, isn't it? But you have these little moments in the day, in the cat's life, where they do something exciting, something cute, something worth attention, something that really is highly stimulating, comparing to the usual behavior of them. So when you got a cat and you grow it for some time, right, it really rewards you with some strange but funny behavior, isn't it? So it's really the rewards. But our brains understand, you take care of the cat. For most of the time, it's a boring creature, and you have these little moments when it's exciting or cute or funny or whatever, when the stimulation level is higher than the normal one. And what happens, really want to turn this lower now? I'm just gonna put it on the background, we're gonna speak about it. And what really happens when you fill your brain with these rare moments without growing a cat, without taking care of it, without paying any resources and effort? It's really cheap to have these moments in front of you, but if you don't grow it, it kind of messes up your reward system, because you have all of these precious moments that really cost money and effort normally, but nowadays it's really cheap to get a compilation of these, and when you really flood your brain with these moments, it's not as interesting anymore. By that, you just suck out the joy of your life. And then when you see a cat, yeah, it's a little bit interesting, but you don't really enjoy it as much, because your brain is full of this. And anything those cats would do, it's not as exciting anymore, because you've seen it like 1,000,000 times. So basically you mess up your reward system, and the life is not so joyful. I'm going to skip the example on the sports. I don't think it's that actual today. But it's about the same thing. I watch sports, but I watch compilation of the most effective moments, of the most athletic moments, and I went back to watch a full game, and I found myself boring. I couldn't watch the full game, because full game is pretty boring. They run there, they do something, they run there, they do something, and one time in 10 games they do something amazing. And when you watch the compilation of these most amazing situations, you can't really watch the full game anymore because it's much more boring. And my brain would crave for stimulation and would crave for cheap and easy high stimulation, which are in our phones. So the conclusion of this part is that it is really possible to inflict yourself with attention deficit if you overstimulate your brain with high stimulation activities. That was the point of the lecture. We're going to speak about something else as well. Overdiagnosed problem. So these days, people would inflict themselves with attention deficit. They're not genetically built to have attention deficit, but they would do highly stimulative activities and would mess up their brains. And they would go to the doctors and they would say, I cannot concentrate, what's wrong with me? And doctors would say, maybe you have ADHD. But they would never ask these days, what's your lifestyle? Do you really take care of yourself? What you do through the day? What's your screen time? They would say, okay, you cannot concentrate, here's amphetamine, be healthy. So, and the problem is, there are a couple of problems. The example I'm presenting was made in Britain last year, so pretty new case. There was a journalist, he didn't have any attention problems, and he would go to 3 private medical clinics, and he would claim that maybe I have an attention problem. And all these 3 clinics would give him the disorder and offer him amphetamine, which is medicine for ADHD, without even checking anything in deep about his lifestyle, about his life starts and what he's doing and how he's treating himself. And they would do it like in a Teams phone call. It was not even a live visit. It was just for the computer. So it's pretty low standards threshold to give someone such a difficult disorder, ADHD, and treat with amphetamine, really highly stimulated drugs. And the problem is that private clinics, financially has a financial incentive to overdiagnose because they are the ones that claim the disorder, detect the disorder, and they are the ones that will give the medicine. So there is a human being coming to your clinic, and he's sort of a potential drug buyer from you. So there's an obvious financial incentive to overdiagnose because the person will buy medicine of your clinic, will donate money though. Very simple. And there's no independent review. All of the private clinics in Britain, for sure, not sure in Lithuania, there is no independent review. Somebody gave someone a disorder. There's no one independent to check if this is what was done properly. So the problem is obvious in this case. I want to speak about previous high stimulation legality. How long one could get highly stimulated drugs in the United States with no prescription until it was banned. Do you mind trying to guess? For example, cocaine. Cocaine started 189 something. I can be wrong with the numbers. But once it started, for how many years you could get it simply in the United States until it was banned? Do you want to try to guess how many years it would take? Given
For what?
For the moment of cocaine to come into the market and until it was banned, how many years you could get it very simply without prescription?
5.
5. What do you think?
2.
What do you think?
7.
Okay, that's good. So you could get amphetamine by the brand name Benzedrine for 50 years. You just come to the clinic, whatever pharmacy unit. I want it. It was an inhaler, so you could inhale amphetamine for 50 years. Cocaine by the brand name of Coca-Cola, which still exists to this day, but there's no cocaine in it anymore, obviously. So you could get it for 60 years. And methamphetamine, really hard one again, by the brand name Desoxyn, 80 years until it was banned in the United States. So many lives ruined, many people lost their lives because of this. Because it's really difficult though. because you have to defeat the big money as well. So how many years it will take us to understand that screen time is high stimulation, and when we're gonna start regulating it? If something as obvious as drugs took, I don't know for how many years, 50, 60, 80. So when we're gonna speak about that the phone does the same damage basically, just in a different way, it might take 50, 100, and maybe 200. We're gonna be dead though. We're gonna be dead. I'm telling you. But not all of the countries think like that. So for example, in Taiwan, the first flag, you can get a fine up to $1,595 if your child uses electronic devices exceed a reasonable time. I don't know what that means exactly though, but there is a fine, and you can get fined for that. France in Europe set an example. They got a policy that will require to identify yourself when using a social platform, a social media platform. So if you don't have 15 years and you cannot provide your ID, you're not going to be able to use the platform. So this is sort of a step to stop children from using social platforms, because they are addictive. And this will get into power in 3 years, I believe. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how they do with it and how the European Union responds to it. And the last example is China, one of the harshest regulation on screen time. So you can only play online games for 3 hours a week in China, between 8 and 9 p.m., 1 hour on Friday, 1 hour on Saturday, and 1 hour on Sunday, and you're done. That's it. So, and the phone screen time, if you are 16 to 18, you are allowed a maximum of 2 hours online a day. If you are 8 to 16, it's 1 hour. And if you are up to 8 years old, it's 40 minutes online in China for children. So, and how the regulation happens. The first step is public awareness. People have to start thinking about it. It's wrong, it's bad, it sucks my time, it destroys the joy, it really influences my life satisfaction. So, but most of the people don't even care about it though. You're gonna ask someone, they're gonna say scrolling, I don't know what's wrong with it, I'm just watching videos, that's it. Gaming, the same thing though, what's wrong with it, people will say. So, but when the public awareness happens, and at some point it must happen though, there's no other way, then it draws the lawmakers' attention because they watch the public opinion, because they want to be elected. And if you got some honest lawmakers, which is not an often case though, but sometimes it happens, then the lawmakers gain power and they can do regulations of this activity. So let's say one decides that one is overstimulated. What's going to happen when you sort of decide, I'm overstimulated, I want to lower my normal levels of stimulation? What's going to happen? What's waiting for you? So I got these specifics of 2 websites. It's called Screen Time Addiction Withdrawal. So with all of the addictions, you've got some withdrawal symptoms, which will be irritability and aggression. This one is very obvious with kids. When you take away the games of them, they're sort of very, very aggressive, very irritable, very, very obvious in them. Then intense cravings. This is attention deficit, the thing that we spoke about today. So you try to lower your average level of stimulation. Obviously, your brain will call for the high stimulation. It will tell you, scroll something, play something, please do it. Then anxiety and depression, boredom, obviously. Increased isolation is an interesting one as well. People don't expect that usually, but it's really simple actually. If you used your phone for a lot of time and you've been a digital person and you want to get back to your life, you don't have the mechanism to get friends anymore, get in love in real life, you know. You would download the app usually and you would do things there, and it's very simple. But when you get back to the real life, you increase your isolation because you have to train yourself again to do all of these things in the real life without your phone, which takes time, so you are kind of isolated for some time. And also the symptom is disrupted sleep patterns. This one's really obvious though. So I got these symptoms from two sites, helpguide.org and gamequitters.com. So some people and some organizations think about gaming like it would be something like cigarettes, and it is though, because the site is called Game Quitters. So some people use it really with care. So for the end, addiction is subtle. It's really dangerous. For these reasons, we never had high stimulation activities like this before. You would never have a device which would cause so high stimulation that you mess up your reward system, like a drug. So it's really simple. It's really difficult for us to understand how this thing that I keep in my hand and I make calls and I scroll something can do something like this, but it does. Most public think screen time is innocent. Told you many times. Usual opinion of a person. What's wrong with it? One wrongdoing. But there are many wrong things. This one's really important because it really drives the public opinion. Benefits lazy parents. If you have a child, these days it's really simple to shut the child up by giving a phone or a game. Immediate silence in the house. And some parents that are lazy and just want to shut up the kids because they are crying or being loud all day, they would give the phones and they would just not care about it. And the last one is why the addiction is subtle. Pervasive use of screens. Screens are everywhere and we're not going to avoid it. It makes us as a community, as a society, the world much more productive, and we are going to use it, but it is really a different what you see. It makes a difference what you see in your computer screen or your phone screen. Are you reading a book, which is fine? You're reading news, which is okay. But are you scrolling high stimulated videos? You're doing pornography, or you are in Instagram where all the world is much more colorful and the people are much more beautiful, and it really makes a difference. And that's it. Thank you very much. That's my professional account. If you want to connect and discuss something.